Well, good morning, sisters and brothers. How's everybody doing? It's really great to be here with you today in Las Vegas. Thank you so much for the warm welcome and, of course, for the invitation. NDP, right on, brother. Coming from Canada, where our winter has really started to drag on, I have to say it's great to be this far south. And, of course, it's a real honor to be here with you all this morning. I want to sincerely thank Leo Gerard for inviting me down to join you and for the great work that he is doing as president of the United Steelworkers. And I, of course, want to acknowledge and thank Ken Newman, National Director for Canada, and, of course, my friend Marty Warren, the Director of District 6, which encompasses my province. All three of these amazing leaders have been solid allies of mine over the years, and I want to thank them for their ongoing support. Thank you, brothers. I am honored and privileged to also call these folks my friends and to stand with them and all of you in solidarity. Because standing together, standing up for working women and men, it takes all of us. I understand there's also several hundred Canadian steelworkers here this week. Bonjour, mes amis. And I'd like to thank you as well, frankly, for your hard work at home in Canada and for taking the time to represent our country here at your convention. Our friendships and alliances, whether they're between different unions or diverse justice-seeking groups fighting for the same cause, those alliances are incredibly meaningful. I think the theme of this convention, in fact, the power of unity, is more relevant now than ever. Unions and labor activists have always understood the power of unity, working together. From the certification, thanks, brother, from the certification of the smallest bargaining unit to nationwide labor actions, unions have always depended on the power of people working and sometimes fighting alongside each other to improve life for workers and their families. And in doing so, you have won truly life-changing rights, benefits, wages, and working conditions for millions and millions of families. Labor activists have always been closely tied to other struggles for justice in their communities, from civil rights to anti-poverty activism, from broad labor rights for all workers, like the fight for a $15 minimum wage, to equity issues and human rights. And I think that's where the power of unity really can change the world. You know, recently I was with our brothers and sisters from the Amalgamated Transit Union in my hometown of Hamilton, Ontario, as they celebrated the 110th anniversary of a 1906 Hamilton Street Railway transit strike. Transit workers back then, over 100 years ago, were striking against greedy company owners for better working conditions, but also for public electricity and public transit, and for the principle of good stewardship of our public resources. You see, the transit company at that time was also the power supplier to the city of Hamilton, and they tried to push on. They tried to ignore the striking workers and operate with scab labor. And what happened? The public, the citizens of my city, back in 1906, boycotted the scab-run transit system. 10,000 Hamiltonians marched on City Hall in support of the unionized workers. The company was forced to honor the collective agreement. But it didn't stop there. The people of Hamilton went on then to elect a pro-labor city council and eventually voted to eliminate the for-profit power setup in favor of a publicly owned power provider that still exists today in Hamilton. Sisters and brothers, that's the power of unity. You know, it's a timely reminder of what can happen when we stand in solidarity, when our communities get together to fight for decent wages, pensions, and respect in the workplace. And it's a great reminder that when a union stands up for its members, it's also standing up for the good of the entire community. That idea, the idea that by working together we can help not just ourselves, but everyone, is something that Canada's New Democratic Party shares with steelworkers, and for a good reason. The NDP, as my party is more commonly known, is truly a political party that Canadians and Canadian unions share. It was created back in 1961 by uniting Canada's organized labor movement and the political left. The first leader of the party, in fact, was just referenced on your video, a man named Tommy Douglas. But you know, before Tommy led the NDP, he was a Baptist preacher, and he had already made a name for himself as Premier of the province of Saskatchewan. And as Premier, all right, Saskatchewan, sisters and brothers. As Premier, he brought in North America's first public healthcare system. That's single-pay, universal Medicare. And that system proved to be incredibly popular and was quickly adopted across the entire nation. Canadians of all political stripes saw the value of fairness, the belief that a person should have access to medical attention when you need it, regardless of how much money you make. And that has become an important Canadian value. The commitment to the fundamental belief that healthcare is a basic human right. To me, sisters and brothers, that is the power of unity. But look, I'm not trying to paint Canada as some kind of paradise. It's damn cold up there. But seriously, people across Canada are struggling these days. Like the United States, Ontario and Canada have lost hundreds of thousands of good manufacturing jobs. In fact, Ontario for many years has been the resource and manufacturing hub of Canada. And that includes significant mining, refining, and materials processing. It also includes a world-class auto manufacturing sector. But as the saying goes, times they are a-changin'. Over the last decade or more, Ontario's lost over 300,000 manufacturing jobs in a province of only 13 million. And just like the manufacturing jobs lost here in the USA, many of those jobs were good union jobs that offered benefits to the workers and their families, and the hope of being able to retire in dignity. They were the kinds of jobs you could raise a family on. Now, as Canadian and North American mining and manufacturing firms get swallowed up by larger multinationals, those jobs are being eliminated. Hamilton, my hometown, it's about an hour and a half from Buffalo, New York. Hamilton, for many years, was unabashedly a steel town. In fact, as a politician from Hamilton, as was mentioned in the remarks in my introduction, you know, from that city, as a politician, I've been proudly happy to wear the mantle of the steel town scrapper. And I'm ready to get into a scrap when it comes to defending working people. The roots of my city were in the steel industry, all aspects of it. And people were proud of it. Jobs in the mills were good jobs. You could buy a house, raise a family, and plan for retirement working at the mill. And tens of thousands of Hamiltonians did just that and grew a great city in the process. But times have changed. Hamilton's still a steel town, but sadly that doesn't mean what it used to. Mills have changed ownership, and workers and their families are paying the price. At the former Steel Company of Canada, Stelco, things are dire. Stelco was one of Hamilton's major employers for decades. At its peak, it was home to 30,000 workers. Now Hilton Works has been all but shuttered. And the latest in a string of owners over the years claim that they can't pay the pensions owed to the retirees. You know what that means? It means that men and women who put every ounce of themselves, shift after shift, day after day, year after year into that plant, are now facing uncertainty and even poverty in retirement. But let's be clear. Pensions are not bonuses, and they don't belong to the company. Pensions are deferred wages. Pensions are not a gift from the employer. That's money that you've earned. And now workers in Hamilton who built that company with their bare hands are being left with nothing. That, sisters and brothers, that is wrong. And I know that American workers are facing the same unjust fate. You know, the province of Ontario's economy is intertwined with the economies of its neighboring states. Our auto sector thrives when Detroit thrives. Our manufacturing suffers when manufacturing in America suffers. But sisters and brothers, the problem isn't the border. The problem is greedy international companies that don't give workers the respect that they deserve. Companies that sacrifice the very workers that built them up, and governments who care more about Wall Street than they do about the workers who drive the North American economy. Too many governments are simply not supporting the North American manufacturing industry the way that they should. Government should be about giving people a chance at a good life by fighting for good jobs that you can raise a family on, and by making sure that you have access to the resources that you need, like public health care and public education, so you can give your kids a good start in life. And I know that that also means the kind of jobs that you can eventually retire on with dignity and comfort. You know, that's not a fantasy. It never used to be a fantasy, and it shouldn't be a fantasy today. The hard work of unions like the United Steelworkers expanded the middle class across both of our countries. Thanks to the steelworkers, people could earn a good living. Thanks to the steelworkers, people could own their own home. Thanks to the steelworkers, parents could send their kids to university. The middle class was an achievable reality for millions of workers in Canada and the US, thanks to steelworkers. And I know that, sometimes it's starting to feel like that reality is slipping away. But I also know that we can bring it back through, you guessed it, the power of unity. Across North America, governments have been rolling back laws that protect and support workers and their unions, and introducing laws that are downright hostile to organized labor. Whether it's rolling back health and safety laws or bringing right-to-work legislation in that promotes the race to the bottom, that is not acceptable. And that's why in the province of Ontario, the NDP is proudly calling for a return to card check certification and first contract arbitration. Together, these measures make it easier for workers to join a union. And you know why? Because they reduce the likelihood of workers being intimidated by employers, and they ensure access to binding arbitration so that that first contract, which is often very challenging and difficult, can be achieved. We're also working in Ontario to extend organizing rights to all workers in our province, including agricultural workers. But you know, we can't stop at organizing rights. We also have to protect workers at the end of their careers. When a company is facing insolvency proceedings or bankruptcies, workers' pensions should take a priority. It is the workers who build the company, and the government has a responsibility to ensure that pension benefits are at the very top of the list and receive priority status among corporate financial obligations. Priority status for pensions. And you know, we need to look at the big picture, too. We need to make concrete changes to working conditions for all workers. We need to build an economy that promotes fairness, and it starts with small steps, like committing to a $15 minimum wage, a real living wage for all workers. That's the kind of measure that will help workers, that shows respect for workers, and in turn will help our communities to thrive. Like Steelworkers, New Democrats support better jobs, better pay, and better benefits, and we support them for everyone. And I know that every day Americans and Canadians support those things too. Unionized or not, people deserve a fair shot at building a good life for themselves and their kids. I believe that. You believe that. And so does anyone that you ask. And working together, sisters and brothers, we can achieve that. So, throughout the rest of your convention, I hope you stay focused on that theme, the power of unity and how to apply it on the shop floor, working together with legislators to improve working conditions, and working within our communities to lift everyone up and build a future that we can all be proud of. Thank you, sisters and brothers, for welcoming me at your convention and for inspiring me year after year. I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here. I look forward to working with the United Steelworkers to build that better life for you, for me, and for all of us. Thank you so much.